Hello and welcome to the Draft Talk podcast. Hope you've all had a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. 2025 is upon us, and here at the Draft Talk, we're back. The team is back, and we're ready to officially kick off the 2025 draft season. I'm your host today, Brian, and I'm joined by these two legends, Owen and Stu. How are you doing, guys?
Very well, Brian. Happy New Year to you guys. It's been a wee while since we've all been together, and life seems to have got a wee bit away from us at times. But draft season now, time to ignore the wife and kids and get on with what really matters.
Yeah, the end of the NFL season, the teams are getting locked in. It's time to really dig into it, and it's one of those classes that you're going to need some serious discussion on. So you're going to need to stay tuned for the whole lot because there's a lot to talk about with this class.
Absolutely, yeah. Teams are running out of time to tank, aren't they? They're doing a very bad job of it. But yeah, there's no better way to start our draft talk year than a mock draft. We do like a mock draft, as I'm sure you do too. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. Stu's run the random draft order randomizer. It's come up with me first, then Owen, and then Stu. So without further ado, I will take the first pick. Which currently, as we stand, is the New England Patriots. Obviously, it could all change, but as we record this on the 2nd, that's who's picking first with a 3-13 record. I'm going to pick Travis Hunter, the wide receiver and/or cornerback, the most talented player in this draft, I think. Like I say, can play two positions. Don't know whether he will, which he'll play. Bit of this, bit of that. We'll find out. We could do a whole podcast on this. I'm sure we might end up doing that. But yeah, that's who I'm picking at number one. Thoughts, guys? Or I guess if not, it's you on at number two.
Yeah, hard to argue with. Patriots just need good players, so it depends what they value in the spot. For me, Travis Hunter's probably, I think I'll evaluate him as a corner who could potentially play some wide receiver on sub packages if needed. But we'll see what he comes out and says. I don't think there's any way he can do both to the level that he has done in college, but that is an hour-long podcast in itself.
I think I think if there's some other teams picking at one, maybe Travis Hunter doesn't make sense. But for me, he does for the Patriots because they just need good football players. If you're very specifically wanting a corner or you're very specifically wanting a wide receiver, you might take somebody who's a bit more specialised. Again, we are probably going to talk about this ad nauseum. But for the Patriots, they just need to get good football players in that door, don't they? They've got a pretty poor looking roster, so Hunter makes sense from a pure footballing perspective.
Yeah, and if he is a corner, he'll be the first corner to go first overall in the modern draft era. So we'll wait and see how that transpires. So that's me with the Tennessee Titans at 2. They're quite a difficult team to pick for. When I've been doing written mock drafts, they're quite difficult to pin down because they have a lot of needs, but not necessarily in areas where you'd value them high up. So therefore, I'm in this draft, we'll talk about that. You just need to pick good players. So I'm going to select Abdul Carter, the edge from Penn State. I think they need to get more athletic on the edge. And they don't come much more athletic than Abdul Carter, who's got 11 sacks in the regular season. Was a linebacker converted to edge full time this season. He could do with bulking up on against the run, but if you want someone who can get on the field as a rookie as a pass rush specialist, then Abdul Carter will be the man. So I'm going to take Abdul Carter for the Titans.
Yeah, I think it's a really good pick as well. I wouldn't be surprised if he went number one as well. If he is, edge rusher is such a value position, and I think he's the cream of the crop at the moment. So yeah, makes sense to me. I have the Cleveland Browns next, and again, it's a difficult team to pick for. Do they blow everything up and start trading away assets? I don't know. There's been rumours swirling at times about do they want to offload Myles Garrett because they're not going to be competitive for a couple of years. But I'm not going to do that in this mock because I don't have the thought process to go through that all in one go. So I'm going to pick for them. I think they really need to do something at the quarterback position. Deshaun Watson is still going to be there. I just don't see any way they can offload that contract.
They can't.
But can they continue to play him as well is the other question, because he has been so bad. So I'm going to go for Cam Ward, the quarterback from Miami. Very athletic. He has been someone who's boosted his stock quite a lot. He is grown since he's joined Miami. He is erratic. He can be wild, but it'll be fun. So for me, yeah, Cam Ward is a guy who's going to be playing up in Cleveland.
Yeah, who's going to be the first quarterback off the board is quite a heated discussion. It seems to be either him or Shedeur Sanders seem to be the two that everyone is gravitating towards. Cam Ward's he's very creative, but he does put the ball in harm's way, so it'd be interesting to see how teams evaluate that.
Which loops back around to me at number 4 with the New York Giants, a team that's really sort of fallen off, but yeah, really struggled this year, haven't they? You were a couple of weeks late with your sort of preseason prediction. They did bench Daniel Jones, and it didn't turn out well. Later on, did it? Bless him. But yeah, I think they need a quarterback, and I think they'll go Shedeur Sanders from Colorado. Maybe not the most talented player overall left on the board at this point, but the team that needs a quarterback, there's one there. I think they grab him. I think they're pretty happy that they've got him at 4.
I think Shedeur and Dion would quite like being in New York as well. Not necessarily on the Giants at the moment, but the New York market seems to be, I think, one of the kind of places they would like to be seen in. I just get that feeling that some of the other teams that are not as a sexy pick, they're not going to be quite as happy. So New York seems to fit.
Yeah, and there's some pieces in place there, you have to say. Malik Neighbors has been great. Andrew Thomas is really good at left tackle. They've got bits that Shedeur could work with in week 1. And for New York, it's not very often you make a bold prediction that their quarterback's going to get benched in week 4, and that wasn't bold enough in the end.
There we go. You are picking number 5 with the Jags.
Yeah, so with the Jags, I've always come down to it needs to be an offensive lineman or it needs to be a corner. The problem is I'm really, really not a fan of this offensive line class. It stinks, I'll be honest. I would not be touching an offensive lineman in the top 5. I think most of the names, which we're going to talk about a lot of them here, I think most of them probably would be better off as guards rather than tackles. So I'm going to go for the cornerback position, and I'm going to pick Will Johnson, who I think is one of the top players in this class, the corner from Michigan. His play's maybe fallen off a little bit in terms of stats this season, but if you're looking for a pro-ready corner who's got the athleticism and physicality and the size, ball production, you won't go far wrong with Will Johnson.
Yeah, so I've got Carolina next, and there's a couple of routes I think you could go with Carolina. I certainly think that they do need another corner. That would be opposite JC Horn. I think there's an option they could go, but Will Johnson's gone, so that's probably taken that option off the board for me. I did think about defensive linemen as well for them. Mason Graham possibly, but we're also looking at the fact that Bryce Young's had a bit of a renaissance as well towards the end of the season, and Adam Thielen isn't going to be around forever. Jalen Coker's been a great undrafted free agent for them, but they do need other pieces about in there as well. It is tricky. They've got a few options they could go for. I think overall, though, I think Mason Graham is probably the most talented player that they could get, and pairing him up with Derek Brown in the middle of that defense would really show things up for Carolina. So, yeah, Mason Graham's who I'm going to go for there.
Yeah, I think that's a good player. I think Mason Graham's a top 5 player in the class and probably one of the best defensive tackle prospects to come out in the last couple of decades. He's really up there with like Quinnen Williams level of prospect. And I think it'd be very hard to miss on Mason Graham.
Nice. Back to me, number 7 with the Jets. Oh, they're in all sorts of bother, aren't they?
Are they ever not?
Yeah. Who's making this pick? It could be Aaron Rodgers. It could be the oldest son or whatever. Like picking off Madden. We just don't know.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
Yeah. let's see, Jets at 7. I'm going to go Mykel Williams, the edge from Georgia. They've got a lot of needs, some of which they may or may not have covered before the draft, but based on what we don't know, I don't think you can go wrong picking a highly touted edge there.
Yeah, I think someone across. Will McDonald's been pretty good for them this year, so shoring up on the possibly the opposite side of him. He's someone who's got a bit of size, power, explosive to him, a bit of refinement to go there. But yeah, Mykel Williams, you see a lot of these Georgia linemen do pretty well when they hit the NFL, don't they?
Yeah, they're really difficult to pick for the Jets simply because there's just so much unknown. Who's going to be the GM? Who's going to be the head coach? Who's going to be the quarterback? It's just impossible to know. They could maybe do with the right tackle. They could also do with another receiver, tight end. There's lots of ways that the Jets could go. But I like Mykel Williams. He's a big edge rusher, powerful and athletic. So he's one of those that's a prototypical edge rusher in the NFL that teams probably will gravitate to when, as a class depleted of talent, then you'll go for the athletic players is something we might well see. So it's me back up with the Raiders, isn't it? I would really have liked to have gone quarterback, but the Ford and Sanders are both off the board, and I'm not touching another one in the first round. I can tell you that. So the next need has got to be wide receiver. Brock Bowers has been great at tight end up there. Was one of the best rookies in the NFL this season, but we traded away Devontae Adams. We need another one. I'm going to pick Luther Burden III from Missouri. I think he is the top wide receiver in the class currently. I really like Tatora McMillan as well, but I think Luther Burden just has this crafty, elusive route running that I think teams may value slightly higher than the size of Tatora McMillan. So I'm going to take Luther Burden for the Raiders.
Okay. Bears.
9 with the Bears, yep.
Bears have been a kind of funny team this year, haven't they? They've had some moments when they've looked okay, and then other moments where it's just been all a bit poor. I think that other than Montez Sweat, they lack a bit of pass rush, which I think is something they need to look at as well. Their offensive line has been hit and miss as well. Caleb Williams has been under a bit of pressure, but again, I'm a bit like, and I'm not rushing in on this class on offensive linemen, because the tackles are spots that they probably do have the players. They're not going to move on from. Who was the guy who was drafted right tackle a couple of years ago? Darnell Wright. Yeah. They're not going to move on from it. And Braxton Jones has been okay at left tackle. It's more the interior.
Serviceable, yeah. It's the interior they need to look at.
Yeah, I'm probably not going to go interior this early, but then
I think the question is is Will Campbell. How do you evaluate Will Campbell? That he's the only one that you could look at in this spot, I think.
Yeah, for me, I'm probably going to avoid them just now.
Yeah, I don't blame you at all.
So that probably for me then, I think edge rusher, because again, positional value. There's a few players you could probably pick here as well, but I'm probably going to go for Nick Skirton from Texas A&M. He's a really big, powerful guy. He could play that defensive end in the even fronts where he can seal the edge as well. He's maybe not as explosive and quick as some of the other guys, but he's got that mass strength. He's a good bull rusher as well, and he's got the right length as well to play edge. So him and Montez Sweat, that could be a good combination there for Chicago. So I'm going to pick Nick Skirton.
Yeah, he's been carrying some bad weight this season as well. So it'll be interesting through the process to see what his weight comes out at, and if maybe he's dropped some and looks a little bit more athletic as we head towards the combine. But in terms of pass rush, he's probably one of the most refined pass rushers in the class. Yeah. He's extremely polished, but maybe doesn't have the ceiling of some of the others like James Pearce Jr. or Shamar Stewart, who potentially have that other level to go to. But Nick Skirton, I think, is a perfectly fine. I do always consider Will Campbell here, because I think this is where it maybe starts. I don't see an offensive lineman going earlier than this, and the the problem for the Bears has been on the interior of the line, but then you have the flexibility of Campbell being able to play outside if needed, so you can kind of justify it that way. But I don't think you can go wrong. But they will have to attack the offensive line at some point.
Up next, myself with the Saints at 10. Another team that could look at a couple of positions: edge, offensive line. What do we fancy? Yeah, I'm going to go. Just mention James Pearce Jr., the edge from Tennessee. I think it's a need for them. I think we'll see what you guys think when you get around to your top 10s, but I think he's a pretty good player, and I think they'd be happy to get him there with no offensive lineman really jumping out of the page at this point. So that's where we go with the Saints.
Yeah, I like James Pearce Jr. I think he's one of the top edges in this class. The only thing is he is a little bit light, so it's not necessarily what the Saints usually go for, but there is a bit of a change going on there. We'll see what happens at head coach. And they definitely need help on the defensive line. In terms of specialist pass rushers, they don't come much better than James Pearce Jr. So, yeah, I like that pick. San Francisco up next. It's my selection. I think it's got to be offensive line. I would say we've said we're not in love with this class, but we need something, especially at right tackle. So I'm going to take Kelvin Banks Jr. Because I think he probably is better as a guard to start with, but he has the size and the traits to stick at tackle. Whereas I have reservations when it comes to Will Campbell, whether that replicates. So I'm going to take Kelvin Banks Jr. He just play left tackle at Texas, but I'm going to move him over and play right tackle for the 49ers. His footwork can be a bit clunky, but everything else is really sharp for Kelvin Banks. So I'm going to take him here and just let him go, especially as a finisher in the run game.
Nice. Stu, number 12, the Colts.
Yeah, the Colts, they just chucked it last week. They had a terrible game against the Giants, but I think for the Colts, they have to do everything they can to support Anthony Richardson moving forward. They've McMillan is a wide receiver who's still on the board, but I think they've got. I don't know if he's going to be someone who works for them already with what they have. So I'm going to switch that up and go give him a tight end to support Anthony Richardson. Tight ends don't always go in the first round, but I think there might be a couple that do this year. I'm going to pick Tyler Warren from Penn State. He's really dynamic player. He's a versatile. He's got a good route runner. He's physical, yards after the catch. Yeah, I think for me that would be a good safety blanket there for Anthony Richardson and add to what they've already got there in Michael Pittman. He's not had the greatest season, but they've got a good running back in Jonathan Taylor. Josh Downs has played well as well, so that's starting to round out that offense a little bit behind an already reasonably decent offensive line.
Yeah, we've got AD Mitchell still there as well, who
yeah, he is.
Hasn't had a great rookie season, but you know how often do we see him come on? I think it's a great fit, and I think it's where the value starts as well. I'll probably have him as a top 10 player in the class. Tyler Warren is excellent, and he is a pure athlete as well, so that fits in well with what the Colts like to do if Chris Ballard is making the picks.
Right, myself at 13 with the Cowboys. Are you
going to do it?
I want to do it, but I also want to do something else.
There's a question for you as a Cowboys fan. When I come to do mock drafts, everyone puts Ashton Jeanty to the Cowboys. Would you rather wait on a receiver and get another? Wait on a running back and get another receiver?
If it's like this, what I'm going to do is take McMillan.
Okay.
But if he's not there, I'd be quite happy with Johnson. Yeah. It sort of depends. I don't know what they won't do much. Never do much in free agency or anything. And so there's certainly not a running back or receiver. if you wanted to get a running back in free agency last year was the year there was loads of them, but they didn't. Oh, they got Ezekiel Elliott, of course, great. He's just been released to apparently get on a playoff roster. Lol. But so yeah, I've given it away there. I'm going to take McMillan. I don't know if he's still sticking around here at 13. I'm quite happy to take Jonty, the running back, just because he is that talented. If I was in Cowboys brass, I wouldn't run him into the ground like they did with Ezekiel Elliott. Although he was pretty spectacular for the first sort of 4 years, wasn't he? But yeah, I'm not going to try his first name, but McMillan, the wide receiver from Arizona.
Tet, go with Tet.
Tet, there we go.
Yeah, Tetaroa. I think it's a good thought process. I think when you think out that this is a really good running back class, it's probably the deepest position in this class. So if you could get McMillan and then you go back for someone like Mario Hampton in the second, or even like Quinton Junkins in the third, or Travion Henderson, I think that combination makes a lot more sense than what you would get the other way around.
Yeah. There we go then. To you, Owen, the Cardinals at 14.
Yeah, Cardinals. A difficult team to pick for. I like the thought of giving them a really dynamic receiver, but I don't know whether I'm going to take another receiver at 14. So I think I'll go in the trenches. But which side is really the thought process? I'm going to give them Shamash Stewart, the edge from Texas A&M, because his upside is absolutely unbelievable. 6'6", 291 pounds. He's going to have an outstanding pre-draft process where I think you'll see him rocket up boards because of how athletic he is. He's huge as well, and he's not even touching the peak of where he could be. So I'm going to take Shamash Stewart to play the edge at Texas A&M. I've had back and forth with Arizona fans when I've been writing mock drafts, and they all tell me it has to be in the trenches somewhere. So I'm going to take Shamash Stewart.
Yeah, good pick. He's a player who, if he pans out really well, he could be awesome. He's got a bit of everything, but I think
very versatile as well.
Yeah, I think it's just finding his spot is going to be the one. If a team has got a defensive coordinator / head coach who's going to use him to maximize his ability and not try and move him around, but not play him everywhere, so that he's got a chance to develop in one or two key spots. I think he's a player who could come out of this draft really, really well. Oh, I've got a home pick. I didn't realize I've got a homer. So Miami, oh, what a season as usual it's been for Miami, and not necessarily in the good way. And they do have lots of needs. Tyreek Hill's not going to be around forever, but there's no wide receiver I fancy just quite in the middle of the first round. Safety, Malachi Starks is lingering out there because I don't know if Javon Holland's going to be about forever.
You could end up needing 3 safeties if they all leave in free agency.
Exactly. They've also got interior defensive needs as well. Edge rusher, they've been decimated. Chop Robinson's been all right, but Bradley Chubb's been injured. Jalen Phillips is injured again. I'm probably going to go for who I think is the best player, and that's Malachi Starks, the safety from Georgia. Even if Javon Holland doesn't go, and they do re-sign him, I think that too, as a duo, could work pretty well. He's a ball hawk. He's got elite athleticism. He's very high IQ. He tackles well, and I think that would be a nice compliment to Holland, who can maybe play that nearer the box type role between the two. So yeah, other players I did like there, Derek Harmon, I thought about from Oregon. I think he's had a great year, but no, Malachi Starks I think is a better player and will provide more for Miami moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. It's not very often you see safeties go this high, but there's just the type of class this is. Malachi Starks is that type of prospect. He's a blue chip prospect where there's maybe only 5 or 6 blue chip prospects in this class. It's not loaded at the top. So to be able to get a blue chip prospect at a position of need at 15, I think is really good value.
There we go. Me, but sorry, losing my voice a bit. Me with the Bengals at 16. Did he do it? Do they take Johnson?
Yeah, that's what I was considering. It really just depends what happens with T. Higgins, right?
Yeah, true. Well, they could maybe go tight.
And the defense has been horrendous.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. But yeah, let's do it. Take Johnson. I think one of the best players in this draft. And as you said, Owain, it's a very deep running back class, but he's a blue chip player. He's a need. Yes, their offense hasn't really struggled this year, but they'll be missing a couple of pieces. Yeah, why not? Strength on strength. Just try and outscore everyone. Hasn't quite worked this year, but we'll see.
We've all ended up with a homer this one.
Yeah, that's how this happened. Yeah, so it's me up next with the Atlanta Falcons. Though it's not difficult to know where to look here. That the Falcons are in desperate need of a tight end. Kyle Pitts cannot catch the football to save his life. What a waste of a pick. What a horrendous pick that is when you look back on the players that came afterwards.
That was some draft as well, wasn't it? When you look
Jamar
at it
Chase, Penei Sewell, Micah Parsons, all probably top 3 players at their position, all went after. Yeah, what a horrendous pick. But it's got a bit. It's defense. But the problem is the edge rushers have gone off the board fairly quickly here. But the Falcons also need corner. So I'm debating here on Jalen Walker, who is a linebacker edge. I value more at edge. So it would be between Jalen Walker and potentially a corner, because AJ Terrell hasn't been great, but he's still going to be around, and there's nothing really outside of him in that room. So you could also go someone like Siobhan Ravel. I'm going to take Jalen Walker. He's listed mostly as a linebacker in most places, but I think he'll be better as a pure edge rusher in the NFL. So I'm going to go Jalen Walker.
Yeah, he when I was talking about the Dolphins' edge rusher issues, he was the one who was crossing my mind. And a few mock drafts I did before we did tonight, that's who I picked for the Dolphins. But okay. Starks wasn't on the board in those mock drafts. So, yeah, I think that's a good pick.
Nice, Stu. 18 with the Seahawks.
Yeah, I would have taken him for the Seahawks as well, to be honest. But Seahawks, ooh, yeah, they've got, again, difficult team to pick for, but I think this is where I'm going to take Will Campbell. Start him in the interior initially. They do have a left tackle, but they've had issues at right tackle. Could he play across the other side as well? And he's just that kind of, he's not quite got the alarm length that you want from a tackle, and I just don't know whether he will be better player inside. So I think it allows Seattle to put him in where they think's the best and just get a bit of a better offensive line moving forward.
They need so many pieces on the offensive line. You can just pick him and then see where he performs best in camp and just put him one of them. You don't have to.
Just go for your best 5 players.
And he fit in somewhere. There's no doubt about it. We've spoken about Will Campbell quite a lot here, but he is an excellent prospect. He's probably a top 15 player in this class. The problem is his arm length is sub 33 inches, which is going to take him off some teams' boards. And he's got this really clunky stance where he stands up really high, which doesn't necessarily translate really well into the interior. So it's really difficult to know where to place Will Campbell, but you find a way to get him on the field because he is excellent.
There we go. Okay, myself, 19 with the Texans, who, they're in the playoffs, but people had high hopes for maybe, we'll see how they get on in the playoffs, but maybe not as successful as they thought after last year. I'm going to have Siobhan Ravel, the corner from East Carolina. I think that's a need for them. Yeah, they've had some pretty nasty injuries, haven't they, this year, and hopefully for them they'll pass for next year. But I think that'll help them on the defense, and then we'll see how else they do this off season.
Yeah, I think he's a big long corner who looked really really good. Unfortunately, he's had a nasty injury and should hopefully be ready in time for the circuit of testing and everything. So I think he maybe slipped off some people's minds a little bit because he's not been playing. But come draft season of testing and various things, he should be good to go. And I think he'll just remind everybody of what a potential prospect from a smaller school. But he is someone who I think if he's paired next to Derek Stingley, that makes a nice young cornerback group for the Texans.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think, who's the guy from Georgia that they drafted who's actually performed quite well at a corner. So that would give him a really nice rounded room. Siobhan Ravel, yes, he's tore his ACL, so we'll see how that happens. But in terms of combining size, athleticism, and physicality, you can't get a better combination than Siobhan Ravel. His overall attributes for the corner position they just scream first round pick and high first round pick, because corners don't come around like this very often, even if he has suffered an injury. So that'll affect how high he goes, but I think he still goes in the first round, even with that injury.
You align with at 20 with the Broncos.
Who saw this come in? Broncos.
Not me.
20. I think they were favourite to be a top 5 pick at the beginning of the season.
It's been spicy.
Yeah, great. I mean, we probably should have expected it from Sean Payton, right? But yeah, quality job. And Bo Nix coming in as a starter has had his moments, but has looked really good for the most part. And I think I would focus on trying to get him more weapons. So I'm going to go Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan. He is more of a pure pass catching tight end. We spoke about Tyler Warren earlier. Tyler Warren's going to offer you more as a blocker. Colston Loveland isn't going to offer you much as a blocker, but his versatility and ability to move him around will, and designing plays, Sean Payton designing him plays will. I can see how this all comes together. So I'm going to take Colston Loveland, playing from the slot. You can play him in line, just get him catching the ball, and I think he's probably the best receiver on the board at that, even at tight end, because he's that good as a receiving weapon.
Yeah, I think Sean Payton's done a really good job of Bo Nix, accentuate the positives, hide the negatives, just done what he's done really well, and giving him more options, I think, is not a bad thing, because he's experienced and he often does make the right decision. He can read the field pretty well. So, yeah, they don't really have very much in that tight end room that's much to write about for the Broncos. So, yeah, load up and let Bo Nix do what he can for as long as he can.
Yes, Stu, number 21 with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
There's a lot of these teams that are difficult to draft for, aren't they? Because I think, I
think it's easy to identify, or not easy, but it's quite simple to identify the need for each team.
Yeah, it's fitting
the player, and I think we're going to see that a lot. I think that'll be a theme throughout, not even necessarily for us, but for NFL teams who you'll think, oh, this is what they need, but they just take the best player in this draft rather than trying to force the need. That we say it so much, you draft for value, not for need, and I think this could be one of those drafts where teams buy into that even more than ever.
Yeah, so I've kind of thought about this one for a wee while, and I'm going to pick Emeka Egbuka, the wide receiver from Ohio State. He is not far off being the all-time program leader in receiving yards at Ohio State. And when you think of the receiving talent that's come through that pipeline, certainly in the last few years, a really good route runner. He's athletic and clever player. Mike Evans isn't going to be around forever as a receiver, and Chris Godwin's had a horrendous injury this year. That was a real nasty one. And he's going to be a free agent as well. Are they going to pay all the money to keep him? So I think given Baker Mayfield, who's been absolutely flying this year, someone who you can throw the ball to, another option as well in that game. Again, there's lots of players and needs that you have, but is the value there? So yeah, Emeka Egbuka, who I'm going to pick in this spot.
He's just such a solid, refined receiver. as a slot option, there's not a lot he can't do. He's just so smooth, catches everything. Like you say, he's going to be all likelihood by the end of the playoffs, he'll be the program leader. How long that lasts for, I don't know, because they've got a much better receiver already on roster, Jeremiah Smith. He is a freshman and would go number 1 overall.
Oh, he's
in
unreal.
This draft because he's absolutely unbelievable. Having comparisons to Julio Jones as a freshman takes some doing. No, you can't draft him until 2027 though, so we'll park him for a little bit.
Okay, myself with the Chargers at 22. We've got a little LA run here with the Chargers and then the Rams. The Chargers, let me think. Done a pretty good job, Jim Harbaugh, in his first year back in the NFL. Obviously now this point of the program, they're in the playoffs. I'm thinking defense, corner. I'm gonna go Benjamin Morris from Notre Dame. Think it's a bit of a need. He's from what I'm looking at, the best corner on the board. I was tempted by I don't know why. I was sort of before I got onto it, I was looking at receivers and tight ends, but because they've had a mixed bag of results from there, haven't they? Quincy Johnston loves dropping the ball, but he has got 8 touchdowns. So if he can catch it a couple more times, that'd be nice for them. But yeah, Benjamin Morrison, corner for the Chargers.
Bad McConkey slander.
Yeah,
he's been awesome.
Yeah. Benjamin Morrison's got he's got a hip injury. He's been out most of the season. So we'll see. They've not disclosed much about that injury apart from it's just a hip injury he's had surgery on, but we don't know much else. College teams don't disclose the injuries like NFL teams, so it makes it more difficult. We'll obviously get more information through the draft process, but that has meant that his name has dropped down a bit. He's really refined, but we could potentially see other corners go ahead of him simply for that reason. He's not necessarily the most athletic, but in terms of if you just want a good corner, then you're not going to go far wrong with Benjamin Morrison.
Okay, sticking in LA, it's the Rams at 23 with you, Owen.
Yeah, I thought about corner here as well. I'm just not sure there's a corner I potentially value at 23. So I'm looking at the offensive line, and I'm going to take Cameron Williams, the tackle from Texas. He's a pure right tackle. He's only played 1 year, but in a class where there isn't many traits or there isn't many pure tackles with the size that you expect from an NFL tackle, Cameron Williams stands out for that reason. So his play doesn't necessarily scream first round value because he has, especially the Georgia game, he got beaten a lot. But if you want to draft a tackle who was built like an NFL tackle, who's got the physicality and the athleticism that you want to develop, then Cameron Williams, I think, is going to get a lot of suitors, and I would not be surprised if he ended up as the first tackle off the board because we know that teams buy into traits at this position.
Yeah, he is someone who doesn't have any questions about the arm length and the athleticism, really.
Yeah.
He's raw, but following the Rams, they've shown that they've not been scared to play young guys. You know, they've got a really young roster and developing under somebody like Sean McVay, who isn't under pressure to win. You know, of course, every NFL head coach is under pressure to win, but Sean McVay does get a bit of time, and he will have time to invest in his coaching staff in someone. So Cameron Williams, with all the traits in the world, yeah, he could do well in LA.
Considering they went so many years without a first round pick, they've done a damn good job of drafting in recent seasons. You know, Braden Fisk,
Jared Verse,
both of them. Braden Fisk leads the team in sacks, and Jared Verse has been great as well. That defensive line is coming on really well. So Kobe Turner, isn't it, in the middle?
Byron Young as well.
Byron Young, yeah, I was getting their names mixed up there, combining them together. That is for how young that defensive line is great job by them.
Stu, yourself, Green Bay Packers at 24.
Yeah, they're another team who you wonder how are they drafting this late on, because I they're good, but I don't think the Green Bay Packers are an amazing team. But they've won enough games to be in the playoffs and this high up. So yeah, again, it's about what's on the board versus what they need. I'm going to go for a player that I really like. He might be not everyone's cup of tea, but I'm going to go for defensive tackle from Ole Miss, Walter Nolan. He's heavy. He's quite a compact kind of guy, but he's not the biggest defensive tackle in the world that you're going to see. He's under 300 pounds, but he has got raw power. He gets through the blocks really well. He's going to get in the backfield pretty regularly as well, be a really disruptive influence. So yeah, I'm going to go for Walter Nolan for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, his raw flashes are up there as the best in this class. The problem is he's not consistently shown that. But in terms of athleticism, size, Green Bay's difficult to draft for sometimes, but you can see why that fits.
Absolutely. Okay, myself at 25 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They sort of fit the mold as well. Not an amazing team, but in the playoffs, 10 wins. Yeah, doing pretty good. At one point, looked like they could maybe nip in front of the Ravens. Didn't quite manage it. So yeah, what we're going to do with the Steelers? Any ideas, guys?
Yes. Wide receiver stands out, but they are not a team that draft wide receiver in the first round. They just never do. It's something that they'll probably do in round 2 or round 3 and nail the pick. It's just what they do. Defensive tackle and the future defensive tackle is something you could look at, as is corner, but yeah.
You're just looking at value, aren't you, of who what your needs match with who you're going to pick, and it might just be that they just go, actually, who do we have highest on our board here?
Yeah,
that's not helping you, is it, Brian?
Well, I was thinking about tackle, so that's helped a tiny bit. Yeah, we'll go to Oregon. We'll go Derek Harmon, the tackle there. Like you say, at this stage in the proceedings, they haven't got any huge needs. I think you're right that they love picking a second round receiver and absolutely banging it. So yeah, let's go.
Brazen, we'll clip that up.
Yeah, he's done really well since he's transferred over to Oregon this season. He's been a pretty disruptive pass rusher. So you can't go wrong if you get someone who can rush the passer from the defensive interior.
Yeah, and has been solid against the run as well. I'm up with the Washington Commanders, and I think I'll stick with the same position. I'm tempted by edge, but their defensive line, just the names just don't scream out anything to you. Does anyone know who the Commanders' edge rushers are? Because
I don't have any.
They signed them all.
Yeah, off. They don't have any. Yeah, they're all free agents. So if you're playing Clelin Farrell, then we maybe need to look at improving. But I'm going to go on the interior of the defensive line, because I think that's where the value is here. And I'm debating between Tyreek Williams and Kenneth Grant. I like the upside of Kenneth Grant, but I can't imagine there's many better players left on the board than Tyreek Williams, the defensive tackle from Ohio State. So I'm going to take him here. He's just solid against the run, first and foremost, but then what he can flash as a pass rusher, I think is really exciting addition.
You think that the Commanders could potentially just be like, we've got Jaden Daniels, let's help him out. He's a bit of a talent. That's the only thing I was thinking, obviously.
Yeah. So, but I would, if one of the tight ends, so whether Tyler Warren or Colson Loveland were on the board, I would have taken the tight end. But the receiver, the next receiver I like would be Isaiah Bond, but I just don't have a gut feeling that we're going to see many receivers go in the first round. I think there'll be a run on them in the second.
Cool, just an idea. Stu, 27. The Ravens.
The Ravens, yeah. What am I going to do here? It's getting to this point of the draft now. If I'm a general manager, I'm looking at, does anyone want to trade up and get out of the first round when you start getting to this low end? Because the value now, I suppose you get the bonus of a fifth-year option, but the value between the second round and first round is minimal here, I think, in the player that you're going to get.
I think it's minimal outside the top 10, to be honest with you.
Yeah. But at this point, you really get to that point now. Do you want to? Actually, I would rather have a couple of players and get similar and trade out. But is anyone going to be desperate to trade up for somebody? That's the thing as well. So you've got to find a dance partner. So I don't know what I'm going to do here. In all honesty,
the difficult. The corner is definitely a need, as is, but the offensive line is just a perennial issue.
Yeah, for me, offensive line was what I was looking at, and who do I go for? I think Ariante Ursery probably from Minnesota is probably my top guy on the board that's still left from the offensive line. I don't have any great conviction about him going to the Ravens, but the Ravens just need to do something to work it out. And if he's one of the best 5 players, get him on the field and do what you can.
Yeah, he's built like an ox, isn't he? He's huge, and his power and his strength are I'd say probably some of the best in this class, because he's more mobile than you would give him credit for, given his size. But his power profile is absolutely insane.
Clearing people out the road for Derrick Henry is never going to be a bad thing with the Ravens.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, that leaves me next with the Eagles at 28. Yeah. Let's have a look.
Their team is so deep and so strong that it's not like you can identify a need here and go, we'll give them that, and because they're 2-3 deep at most positions.
Yeah.
You're almost at the point with the Eagles. You're thinking, what are they going to need in a couple of years?
Yeah.
And draft. They've had such that progression particularly with the offensive line and even with the defensive line. They've drafted a year or two ahead of what they need, so they really do have that luxury.
I just love to hear that. Right. I'm tempted to go. They like to go in the trenches, don't they? That's where it builds from. They've done pretty well there in the past. I'm going to go Landon Jackson, the edge from Arkansas. Like you say, a good team, good deep roster. They've got players that they've drafted that haven't even sort of played yet. They haven't had time to play yet. So I think they stick with what they know, drafting in the trenches. I'm trying to think where they've not got any huge needs. So yeah, Landon Jackson, the edge from Arkansas, 28 at the Eagles.
Yeah, he's big, he's long, excellent pass rusher. I think he'll go in the first round.
He is super long, though, and he's really tall for a passer. He's supposed to be about 6'6", 6'7", something like that. He's a big lad.
Owen, you're next with the Bills.
Yeah, Bills. I'm looking at the secondary. I seem to think about corner for the Bills every year. I'm going to go down that route again. I'm going to take Shedeur Barron, the defensive back from Texas. Some have him as a corner, some have him as a safety. Really, it doesn't matter which one you prefer, because he would start at both positions. So, but I would quite happily play him at corner. But if you think he's a safety, that isn't going to stop me picking him, because the Bills also need safety help. So I'm going to take Shedeur Barron, the safety from Texas. One of the best tacklers in this class. He does not miss a tackle, which is why some people evaluate him as a safety. But he will be one of the top 32 players in this draft. And so I'm going to take him in the first round to the Bills.
Yeah, so Vikings next. Who'd have seen this one? Our our good friend Shona from 99 Yards days had Sam Darnold in the sea a few years ago. So he's been taken out, barnacles cleaned off, seaweed out of his hair, scrubbed up nicely. He's had an immense season. It's been unbelievable to watch how well Sam Darnold has played. So I'm not picking quarterback. Even so, yeah, I think he's probably too good a player to let slip past, and he is a need as well. I'm going to pick Kenneth Grant, defensive tackle from Michigan, the other tackle from that duo that they've had. He's a massive guy with a really low center of gravity. He's difficult to move. He sets that tone in the center of the defense. He can take on the double teams. He's maybe not the quickest and most athletic of guys, but in that defense, that's not what you're going to want him to do. They've got plenty of other guys that, Brian Flores likes to send people blitzing ad nauseum. So he just gives them a little bit of a different option, particularly in the run game and things as well. Real stout presence in the middle of the defense. So take Kenneth Grant from Michigan.
Nice. Myself, with the Lions at 31. Where to go here? Again, very good team. Don't have any huge needs. Defensive front, obviously they've had some pretty bad injuries there. You've got to hope you haven't got them again next year, but it certainly didn't help to bulk that up. I'm looking who's available. They went sort of sorted the corners out last year, didn't they? Yeah, let's go.
Edge feels like the logical way to look. Yeah, even with Aiden Hutchinson and someone else, it does make sense.
And I think, like you say, at this stage in round one, it's back end of round one equals half round two, doesn't it? So talent wise, so yeah, I'll go Princely
Mykel.
Just about to say that. From Ole Miss, the edge. I'm not jumping for joy at that, but I think that'd be a smart pick for them. It fits what they need, and like you say, put him in there. Hopefully, they don't have the injuries they've got, and he can go. Whatever I said before, go banging for them.
I think the attention that Aiden Hutchinson will get on the other side when he's fit. This is a guy who's got a really, really quick first step. He's off that line really quick, and he can beat tackles, in a one-on-one on that first step. So, yeah, when he is only going to be, he's not going to be double teamed on a regular basis if Aiden Hutchinson's on the other side. So, could have been open for somebody really quick on that side.
And to finish us off with the Chiefs, Owen, it's you. Don't want the Chiefs to win again, do we? But we're just going off the record at the moment.
I hope this is not the 32nd pick. It's not the Kansas City Chiefs. Unless they've traded down, I'll take that.
They've got away with it quite a bit this season, haven't they? How many one-score games have they just absolutely scraped? To do it once, you can call it a fluke. To do it as many times as they have this season, it's just good coaching, and isn't it? Really, because you can't fluke that many games. But the offensive line has been rocky. Patrick Mahomes has gotten them out of some sticky situations. So I'm going to take Josh Simmons, the tackle from Ohio State. He has been suffering with an injury, but I think if he wasn't injured, we'd be talking about him as potentially a tackle 1, 2, 3 in this class. So I'm going to take Josh Simmons, and then you can just play him whichever side you feel most comfortable with, because Kansas City are going to have to do something at both tackle positions eventually.
There we go. First mock draft in the bag. Not for you, Owen. I know you're firing them out every week.
Feels like it.
Check that out. Yeah. So what do you think, guys? Enjoyed that? Glad to be back.
Shook the rust off there. We're ready. We're back and rolling.
Go. Yeah. I mean, wow, this is going to be. This is going to be probably not the best draft that we've covered. I think it's fair to say, but yes. probably the one we're going to have the most to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
So from that point of view, it's really, really interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun over the next few months.
Yeah, it's really difficult to find the words to describe this draft class, because a lot of people are going to go straight to the word it's a bad class. It's not a bad class, and you're not going to know that for at least a couple of years in the NFL when you look back at the picks and see how bad it was. But the top end talent isn't what we have seen in previous classes. But you are still going to get good players, and it means the debate on what these teams need, even the first round, whether it's the second, third, it's going to be a lively debate. It's not going to, and there's going to be plenty of teams that come draft night where you sit there and go, well, that's an underwhelming pick. Well, maybe this is what the draft has needed. This is what NFL drafts should be, where players go in not with unrealistic expectations, with not a lot of expectation on their shoulder as such, and are allowed to perform. So I'm quite excited of where this draft is heading, and I think the debate is going to be extremely lively between us and wherever you look for draft media, because there is not going to be a lot of consensus. You could see an analyst have a player ranked 10th and another one have him ranked 50, 60, because they are really fine margins.
I think over the last few years as well, because there has been so many players who are deemed elite blue chip players coming through, there's been a bit of a downplaying of some of the pre-draft stuff.
Yeah.
The combine, pro days, all-star games, whatever you call it on that circuit. I think it's going to mean more this year, because there's a lot of these players who are, if you have a good combine and a good interview, that could be a massive difference in where you're ranked, because all the other guys are very similar. Some of the guys we've had in years past, what's the point in going to the combine, because I'm going to get picked top 5 regardless of what happens. This year you think, well, if I go have a good showing, that can bump you up 20 places in the draft realistically, when you look at that group of players in that similar positions as well. So we might see a bit of love again for some of these things that was maybe died off in last few years.
Yeah, I think it's a great point that the Senior Bowl and the Shrine Bowl are going to be huge this year, because how many times do we see GMs be interviewed and say, we saw him at the Senior Bowl, we spoke to him at the Senior Bowl, and we just liked what we heard. That is going to mean an awful lot in this draft class. We're going to see players drafted highly just off those few days in Mobile.
Lovely stuff. Well, there we go. That's exciting, isn't it? That's all we've got time for today. We'll be back in a couple of weeks. Like we say, we've got plenty to talk about between now and April. In the meantime, enjoy the playoffs, college and NFL. Take care of yourselves. Enjoy the start of 2025, and we'll see you soon.